Welcome back to Beyond the Buckets. Happy to have Jonathan Jones. Welcome to the program, my man.
I'm doing good, Chris. How you doing today?
Man, I'm doing really good. So excited that we were able to get this scheduled and look forward to diving in and talking about a bunch of different topics. But I'd first like to start with, tell everybody out something they might not know about you.
Wow. Okay, so senior year for me, I signed up to be a part of the pit crew is what we called it, and this was the long jump for track and field. And needless to say, I wasn't good at all, Chris. I was terrible. Okay, I was just extremely terrible. So one thing many people may not know about me is that I was on the track team,
Uh-huh.
and I was a long jumper, but I never jumped at a meet ever.
Wow. Wow, that's a pretty good, interesting story. I've never done track. I played baseball during that time, so it was kind of in the same season. But always had a respect for people that can run track or do the jumps or even the throws. It takes a different athlete and a really great mindset.
Definitely, it's a different type of competition. Just understanding, especially with track and field, any of that stuff, they practice running to run some more. So that was the thing that always threw me off. Basketball, you run for conditioning. Football, you run conditioning. But track and field, I was just like, oh wow. Well, I mean, I guess, but that wasn't the lane for me. That wasn't the lane for me.
For sure. Well, give everybody a quick 3-minute backstory on you. I know you played basketball and your junior college was one of the best in the country. So tell me a little bit about your upbringing, your story, and kind of how you got to where you're at right now.
Yeah, definitely. So a little bit of backstory for me. So at that same high school, I was on the JV team at that particular high school, and this was probably one of the best high schools in the nation. Well, they were number one in the nation. This is Wheeler High School at the time. And, just being there, I was a guy junior year, always felt like I was overlooked. I was just a hardworking guy. And it was funny, just before I made that team, my dad always brings this story up to me and just reminds me, I invested and had a coach. So I had a personal trainer, and this was a guy by the name of Keith Lundy. And he was an overseas player, and one of his best friends used to play for the Sixers. So I met him one day at the gym, and he started working me out. And then from that point, and then we fast forward just throughout a little bit more of my life, then I began to really learn the importance of like betting on yourself, the importance of ultimately investing in yourself. And this was a lesson that my parents instilled in me at a young age, always just encouraging us to shoot for the stars, and they're really just giving us the encouragement and the motivation behind it. But that was another just brief backstory. But ultimately, that's two life lessons that I feel that I've taken from my mother and my father, and that has brought me to where I am today. Just working with student athletes and working with colleges and universities, serving and supporting in that way.
For sure. So tell me a little bit about your hoop career after that, because so many times where we might feel like we're overlooked, it allows us to work harder to achieve something that we
hmm
really want. So did that really push you into the next direction of your career? And did you end up staying there, or did you transfer, or what was kind of your process?
Yeah. So, just going back to that high school experience, that was where I learned how to work hard, because I knew that if I wanted to make that team, I was going to have to work really hard. And I didn't make that varsity team, Chris. I did not make that varsity team. But then I ended up going to junior college, and then we won the national championship there. And then just moving on, then went to the University of Texas at Tyler, finished up my career. And just like you said, I was always focusing on sacrificing my body. I was always focusing on trying to work harder, trying to outrun people in sprints, doing all the extra, the extra, which they said was voluntary conditioning at the time. But of course, it was involuntary if you wanted to be on the team. So these were just life lessons that I've been able to just extract, looking back, understanding that working hard was always something that I really believed in. But even at the same time, I later realized that just working hard wasn't going to get me there. It was just having a different skill set and doing intentional work. So those would be some things that I say I was really able just to pull from, taking that time and looking back and where I am now, and just and applying that to where I am today. Because now for me, working hard doesn't necessarily look like, putting in sweat and lifting weights and different things like that, but it looks like being strategic with how I connect with people. It looks like being strategic on how I invest in relationships, just like how me and you got connected. So yeah, though, I mean, those would be just some things that as we're having this conversation, I'm really just, I really want to make sure I underscore, because I think that's truly essential to go beyond the buckets.
For sure. And I think that I would put it like this. You need to understand that the hard work is just your price of admission. And because of the
Mm,
hard work you put in, it will give you an opportunity to, potentially excel, whether that be on the court and business or whatever. But that doesn't guarantee that you're going to actually be successful. There may be some extremely talented people that you are going against. And so you're not going to have that opportunity. But the things that you did learn because of your because of that work ethic and that mindset that you had to have is able to help you and transform you into not just on the court but off of the court as well, and into the individual that you are right now. So it may not work in basketball, it may not work out for
mm,
you in your first business opportunity or anything like that, but I always go back to Kobe's story and his untimely passing this January. He's on a lot of people's minds, but he's definitely on my mind as somebody I
mm,
really looked up to with his just with everything that he was doing post career. And
mm-hmm,
just in the beginning of his career, those 3 air balls against Utah in the playoffs. I mean, it always comes back like, and work harder, because to that point, he already worked hard. And now it just made him go to a whole nother level. And he had the talent, obviously. And then he had the work
mm-hmm,
ethic to go along with it. And then you get some real greatness. But it's not going to work out for every. If you play your role, find a
mm-hmm.
position in which you're on the team, you can still help the team. And that's going to be the most important.
Definitely, definitely. And then Chris, just what you said makes me think of a meme I saw earlier today, and it was a chessboard, and it had just the basic pawn piece, and then it had I believe it's the rook, where it's like the horse, and it says everybody has their role. So we just have to identify that, sometimes you're not going to be the person that's going to score all the points, or you're not going to be the person that's front and center in the business. But at the end of the day, everybody has a position, everybody has a role, and they're all essential. They're all essential.
You're going to have to send that to me because I really like that. And especially, being a coach, everybody's going to have to play their role. And sometimes you sacrifice the pawn for the rook in that case.
Mm,
So,
mm.
yeah, I love it. Tell me about helping people achieve their holistic success. What does that actually mean?
Yeah.
Because
Well,
it sounds
the
real
focus
good.
there. Yeah, Chris, you have to put words together in a certain way sometime to get people to click that button. But just for focusing ultimately holistically is, the whole picture, right? And bringing it down to that, a few things I've realized that are just essential for student athletes, young professionals. Would be mental health, and that's been bigger now more than ever before. A lot of awareness has been getting brought around the mental health conversation, so that would be the first piece. And then the other two would be personal and professional development. So helping these student athletes, young professionals, successfully transition to whatever that next phase or that next stop looks like. For some people, of course, I want to go. I want to go to the league. I want to go pro. That's great. You can go pro, and I'm not here to tell anybody that they can't. But at the same time, you want to make sure that you have a successful parallel plan put in place to where, okay, you go pro and you also still got your degree. So now that you've graduated, and you're not trying to figure out, well, how can I finish my degree, or where do I identify what's next? We've taken time for the personal development, and we've identified some passions. We've taken time and we've realized that, well, this degree will help get me in this door professionally. So ultimately, when we talk about holistic success and holistic development, for me personally, because there's different meanings for different people, for me personally, I'm talking about the mental health, the professional development, and the personal development would really be how I would put those three pillars together to go under the holistic umbrella.
For sure. No, I like that a lot. And the school that I teach and coach at, we are trying to build the entire person, not just a
Mm-hmm.
student or not just an athlete, but the entire combination of those things. And we are holistically trying to build their character as a person, build them on the court, build them, out in the world, and hopefully develop their mindset into a point where they can attack all challenges with an open-mindedness to being better. And that's ultimately what it comes down. The term that you really touched on was the mental health, and I think that is so important for people to understand right now what is really going on in this world. There's so many people with these mental health issues. Can you touch on that just a little bit? And would there be any strategies that people can use right now to help their mental health?
So first and foremost, I'm not sure if many people know the statistic, but suicide is number two among all college students. That's number two, taking out students, and just understanding that social media, the news, whatever media outlets people are plugged up to, we have to realize we have to know when to step away, because some people we're sitting there in front of our phone, and we're desensitized, right? The whole social media dilemma. We're desensitized from liking certain things, or our excitement showing, our joy showing in our face, because we're constantly behind the screen. So the first thing that I would just suggest for people is identify if this thing is draining you, then take some time away, right? Like if you're sitting there looking at Twitter, and you're looking at mentions, and you're looking at hashtags, and you're getting upset, well, it might be time for you to just get up, walk outside, maybe walk the block, do something like that. Because so often I feel that there's certain things that we know are essential. We know that going to bed and getting a solid night's rest, or taking a nap throughout the day, is essential. But sometimes, Chris, we still don't do what we know. We don't do what we know. And even in addition to that, drinking water. Like I have like 2 bottles of water sitting over here. And that's one thing I constantly have to challenge myself on. Yes, sir. You got to stay hydrated. I have to challenge myself, because my wife always asks me, if I say I'm having a headache, she says, well, how much water are you drinking? How much water are you taking in? So those are some things that we can begin to look at. But at the same time, I don't want to negate the fact of talking to someone. Everyone, despite culture, creed, color, or religion, everyone may or may not believe in therapy. And if you're not there yet, I'm not going to force anybody to say you need to go to therapy, you should be in therapy right now. But I would say find a trusted individual that you can have conversations with, unfiltered conversations, to where you can get certain things off your chest, to where after you're like, wow, I feel so much lighter, I feel so much better. Then that's a good place to be, to where you want to be able to have that level of dialogue. And if you have the resources, or certain colleges have sports psychologists on campus and counselors on campus, then I would say access those resources in that way. Because ultimately, through tuition and through everything else, you might as well leverage and benefit from that resource. And then with those people who are therapists and who are licensed, and they practice, they've gone through a certain level of rigor, and they've put in the level of work to be a pro in this arena. So I would say trust the professionals, have those conversations, and then from there, see what else we need to do next.
For sure. I like those, I would say essentials: getting sleep, hydrating, those sort of things. Movement, I think, is huge. If you can just
Mhm.
move for, 20, 30 minutes a day, you can really alleviate a lot of stress. The endorphins really help you if you're able to work out
Mhm.
with your mindset. When we start getting into a sedentary lifestyle, that is where a lot of depression issues can take place. And it's really important for young people. You talked about The Social Dilemma, which is a documentary on Netflix. I would encourage everybody to go watch it, because even as adults, you find yourself getting in a rabbit hole on social media, and you can find
Mhm.
yourself on there for hours. And one thing that I really noticed with our team this year, especially when we go on road trips, sometimes we have them with their phones. Most, I'm pretty cool as long as, we're not in a meeting or something, phones, but I just say, hey, check
Mm-hmm.
your screen time for the week, your average time. And, it would be 6, 7,
Mm.
8, 9, 10 hours on that screen. And
Wow.
the majority of the stuff, like, how does that even work when we have school, for 6 hours a day?
Mm.
And then on top of that, we have practice for another 2 hours, and then we have weights for another. How are you on your phone? Or, unless you're just sitting on your phone all day in school, so it, it really is a social dilemma. I'm not sure how to fix it, but it's in that people need to work at. And I just try to challenge them with this: shut your screen, shut your social media consumption down for an hour per day. And what could you
Mm-hmm.
do in that hour, whether that be better your studies or better your actual basketball, abilities? You're gonna be
Mm-hmm.
better because you're getting off of that for 1 hour. I mean, my screen time right now is 3 hours a day, and a lot of it's
Mm.
emails and texts. I'm not on social media that much, but I even think 3 hours a day is a lot.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's one of those things, Chris, ultimately to where we really just assess priorities. Because like you said, you're on your phone and the majority of that time you're doing emails, you're doing texts and things like that. You said it's not really social media. So you're doing things that are productive, which is the purpose of a smartphone, right? To help us begin to do certain things like this and like that. But on the other side of that, because going back to your initial question, the other side, one thing I want to just hit on is when we're on social media and then we're constantly comparing. Because imagine if out of those 10 hours that somebody is looking at social media and they're constantly just comparing themselves to somebody else who's on vacation, or constantly comparing themselves to somebody who's at an institution that they wish they were supposed to go to, but then they couldn't because of whatever it might be. That's when I think it really becomes to get really dangerous, because then you're feeding this emotion where you're getting angry, you're getting jealous, and that never works out well. That never ends well.
For sure. I forget the saying, but comparison is, basically stealing a lot of your own joy, um,
Mm-hmm.
and what people are portraying is not all, it's a part of their reality, but it's not the whole story. Our friends could post a picture of, he and his wife, right? And they could be getting into arguments and such, right before or after that, and we don't know what everybody else is going through. And that's why, I like to put out content. I don't like to consume a whole bunch of content because I don't want that affecting my mentality.
Mm-hmm.
But the people that do consume, they just have to realize that, like, all these things are being put in your head, and they're forming a lot of their opinions, but they're not really their own thoughts.
That is very true. That is very true. And that, I mean, at the end of the day, either you're a producer or you're a consumer. And I mean that goes down the line, Chris. If we're talking about somebody creating a product or buying a product, or you buying the Jordans or you making the Jordans, like it goes down the line. And we have to be very careful that yes, it's perfectly fine to consume, but at the end of the day, you're going to produce something. And based on what you're consuming, if you're getting angry, you're getting jealous, you're listening to this type of music, that type of music, then you're going to produce that level of attitude. So we have to, just be conscious of all those things.
For sure. Let's switch topics just a little bit. Tell me about podcasting. I believe this is your second podcast. You have a podcast now called Beyond the Ball. And this is Beyond the
Yeah.
Bucket. So I just love the parallels there. I started this podcast, I think, around the same time as you started Beyond the Ball. I started this April, once we were deep into quarantine and things kind of got shaken up by the whole world. And I've really
Mm-hmm.
enjoyed doing this. I've got to meet so many great people. It started me reaching out to people, and we connected on Twitter, and you reached out and shot me a message. I'm like, cool, that's cool, man. He's a good dude. We talked on the phone for a little while, and then we finally got this scheduled. So it's been awesome meeting great people. That's been the best part, getting the best of each of these individuals. And
Mm-hmm.
there's so much greatness out there in this world. And I've just been blessed to have it being poured on the show. And we just had our 50th episode, and I think you'll be around 60. So this is really cool. But tell me about your podcasting journey and what, kind of why you started and all of that.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, man, that's amazing. 50 episodes. That Man, that's amazing. That's really impressive, Chris. Man, congrats on that.
Thank you.
Congrats on that for sure.
I got that type A.
Yes, sir. You got to get in there, and you got to just keep on grinding away at it. But so for me, honestly, at the beginning of quarantine, Chris, just in all transparency, I was just trying to figure this thing out, man. Because before, like you said, I had my other podcast. It was called Speak Your Success. Well, I still have it, but I was trying to think. I was like, well, something needs to shift. Something needs to change, because I was in a space, Chris, to where I was just trying to find a way to legitimately generate money. And this is just being all honest. So I started doing flyers. I started making T-shirts. And then I said, well, wait a minute. I have this experience with student athletes. Let me see how I can create a resource for student athletes. So that was the whole purpose of Beyond the Ball. Then I just started doing the podcast, sharing my experience, more driven towards sports. And from there, I mean, that's continuously still the goal, seeing how we can best serve and support student athletes. And I actually am going to release the 30th episode coming up. So this one, it's been slightly different from my initial journey, but just like you, I got in there, just wanted to produce the content and really be a resource for student athletes trying to navigate once they graduate, once they make it out, and even as they matriculate through.
How have you been able to go about getting your guest on the show? I know for myself, it started real general, just with the population of coaches that I know, and
Hmm.
just reaching out to these people that I already knew, I had relationships with, and then it's transformed to kind of how we met. Going to follow somebody on Twitter that might be saying something really cool, or LinkedIn, or Instagram, or whatever. And I have the funny thing is, I haven't reached out to too many people. I'll just go follow them because I might be interested in them, and they may send me a message,
Hmm.
kind of like how you did, and then that's how the conversations have really sparked. People from all over the country, not just the country, but I've had a guest from New York. I've had a guest from not Texas, like you, and I've had guests from Canada and Australia, and it's just opened up. But
Wow.
it's just been really cool to see how that has taken place. But how have you been able to get your guests? I mean, you've had some really cool guests on as well.
Yeah, so for me, initially, that was how mine started as well. I was just pulling friends that I knew, like I knew their story, I knew their background, and then from there, then I've started out just reaching out to different people. I've been just really ambitious, just in regards to some of the people I'd reach out to. I had James Starks, who played for Green Bay when they won the Super Bowl, on like the fourth episode, I think. And then I recently, a few episodes back, I had Dior Scott, one of the gentlemen who was on Last Chance U,
Hmm.
because just focusing on mental health. So talking with him about that. But that's really how I've gone about getting my guests, by shooting a good old fashioned DM, shooting a DM, and getting connected with some cool people. And just like you were saying, Chris, just there's so many people out here with so many amazing stories. I believe everybody has an amazing story. The question is, who's confident enough to share it? And I think that's the piece where I've reached out to some people, and I've been hurt, not in the fact of like my own personal feelings are hurt, but I've been hurt because people minimize their message, and they minimize their, like, I don't think, John, I don't think, I don't want to do it. I don't want to talk about this. I don't want to talk about that. And then it hurts me because I think of the fact that how many other people might be dealing with something that they've overcome. But yet, if they don't share that message and they don't share that story, then how will that impact be able to move forward? So yeah, I mean, podcast has been a great journey, and just like you said, you get to meet a lot of cool people, and get to have a lot of great conversations for sure.
What's next for your podcast? Where do you hope to take it?
Ooh, what's next? What's next? Well, one thing I have been doing, I've been helping other people start their own podcast. But outside of that, I mean, right now the biggest focus really is just to continue to be a resource. And now, currently, the focus has been getting more current student athletes right now. So students, if they're as they're going through freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, whoever they may be, just getting connected with a few more of them and sharing some more of their stories. But outside of that, I always appreciate the coach's perspective and hearing their backgrounds, and just getting to share that information, and getting to share their stories it has always been big for me. I've always been a big stories guy. So that's the focus right now, Chris. But we'll see, what it evolves into.
I think that one of the reasons why podcasts work is because people love a good story. And so if you have
Mhm.
quality guests on that know how to that have a good story, number one, and then somebody like yourself that is able to dive into questions that basically round out that entire picture, that's when you can really get something going. And yeah, I'm excited to see where you continue to go with it. And I'm sure you're like me, where things have transformed on their own. Like it's changing. Like from episode 1 to episode 30 for you. I'm sure you've kind of
Mhm.
found your lane and where you kind of want to go with it, and that's a beautiful process in itself.
Agreed. Agreed. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things about any journey, right? At first, we might be uncertain. We don't know what the goal looks like. We have an idea, but as we start, then as we move forward, then as we then start to sprint towards whatever that thing is, the picture begins to get more clear. So I'm with you 100%, Chris. Just keep moving forward and just keep evolving it, and make the audibles and adjustments as need be.
You've done a couple TEDx talks. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, so the first one I did, it was a group about 800 middle school students in an auditorium, and I talked with them just about the power of commitment, just wanting them to understand that as you're going through your life, I want you to be encouraged, but going through your life, have fun, but even in addition to that, just be committed to something, and I think that that's something that even as adults we can take, and we can put that in our pocket, because oftentimes, and I know this is going to be an unpopular opinion, but oftentimes that we're committed to something until we get punched in the mouth, until we face the adversity, until we have the argument, or until whatever. So with them, I just talk with them about being just the power of commitment and identifying that commitment. And the second one, just like we were just talking about, I talked about the pain of an untold story.
Mm.
So I go deep in and just share just a time in my high school career where it seemed like Murphy's Law was the only law I knew at that time, and everything was just going down, down, down. And I just shared, how I was broken. I shared how I got fired, how I was about to fail out of school, and everything was just terrible. But the purpose of me sharing that story, just like I said before, was understanding that I don't ever want to be in a place, and I don't ever want to be in a position to where there may be an experience that I've had, or there may be a strategy that I can share that somebody needed to hear, and I pulled back. So then they weren't able to overcome whatever journey that I currently was facing at that time, or that they were facing. So I shared that, and the last piece I'll just say was I was dating a young lady at the time, and she happened to have a miscarriage. After I shared that story, then a couple came up to me after, and they was like, Jonathan, man, thanks so much for sharing that story. We've been in that situation before. And then when they shared that, I said, oh my goodness. And it just touched me different. Just to talk with them and see how they've been able to overcome, and see how they've been able to progress through, and how they've been able to grow in. And now I'm still connected to them, with them to this day on Instagram, and we still chat back and forth. But that's where relationships are built, by people being transparent and people allowing themselves to be vulnerable. So that's really what I wanted to accomplish with that second TED Talk, the pain of an untold story.
Wow, very powerful. We've had a couple miscarriages ourselves, so we know that. And you told me on our pre-call, so appreciate you sharing and your vulnerability. Um, Talk to me a little bit about Success Academy and why you started that.
Yes, sir. So it goes back to the same thing. Everything, I'm realizing everything for me keeps going back to the story. It's all about the story, the story, the story. And just like now, I think more than ever before, we're hearing more of the whole picture of the student athlete story and the student athlete's journey. But Speak Your Success Academy was ultimately created to help people speak their success, believe in their greatness, and create the life and business of their dreams. And that was the tagline for the podcast. And I feel that a lot of people do the first one. They'll say, Happy New Year's at the beginning of the year. This is what I desire to accomplish. This is what I plan to accomplish. So a lot of people might have that one down. But the second part about the believing in your greatness, I think a lot of times it's easy to discount yourself, right? It's easy to say, I want to do this, but I can't because fill in the blank, whatever excuse that we want to pull, right? Whatever the excuse might be. And I want to counter that by showing people what's possible. And I'm working with the client right now, and me and him, we're talking just the other day. And he was saying how since we've been working together that his wife has told him that his content has improved and the things that he's doing on social media are improved. And I'm like, well, I can't take credit for that. You're doing the work, but it's just the fact that you're believing it more. The last piece is create the life and business of your dreams. I don't believe that anybody should be forced to do anything that they don't desire to do. Yes, there are some things that we need to do and that are necessary. Like when I worked at UPS this past December, just to get some bills paid before I got married. But at the same time, we should be able to do certain things that we don't want to do for a certain amount of time to where we can get to that place to where then we start our own businesses that if that's what we desire to do, or we desire to have our own team that we're coaching. So Speak Your Success Academy was ultimately created to just break the mindset of the traditional mold, right? Because I don't want people to be in a spot to where they're looking back and they're 60 years old, they're 80 years old, they're looking back saying, I should have pursued my dreams. I should have just tried this and saw if this was necessary for me, or even if it was possible or attainable. So that's ultimately just why I created Speak Your Success Academy, just to help people break that mold, Chris.
I like it. And actually, I don't like it. I love it. And most people are afraid to actually start, because once you start, then you got a choice. Continue to fight and work. And to your earlier point, once you get kicked in the teeth or,
Mm-hmm.
or something bad happens, and guess what? If you want to work for yourself, it's going to be hard, and if you want if you want to attain, it's going to be hard. But at the end of the day, what's the alternative? You quit and you give up and you don't get to reach your goals or live the life that you actually want. And,
Mm-hmm.
you don't, just like you said, you don't want that for people, but people need to not want that for themselves. That's why I
That's
really
true.
love talking to people like yourself, is because you're not going to allow the thoughts in your head to alter where you're going. You're going to tell those thoughts in your head, no, I'm going to do this. And the power of conviction is what really makes people, and there's going to be lots of times where it's not going to work out for you. And you have to be willing to your original story to, okay, I make the JV team. Now I have to figure a way out. And if that means I have to go an alternate course, I'm going to do that. But ultimately, I'm going to control what I can control and try my very best. And if my very best is good enough, great. If it's not, it is what it is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, I think that's just really what it comes down to. Because Chris, I wasn't always like this. Believe me, I used to be the most negative person
Oh,
that
really?
that there was. I complained about everything. When I was on the basketball team at one point, this was junior college. My best friend, Jabuzo Ilanu, he was sitting by me, and we had our stipend for our meal. We were sitting down, they gave us the plate, and I'm looking at the plate and I'm just complaining, like, what is this? Why'd they give us such a small portion? And why is the drink this? I found a reason to complain about everything, Chris. It didn't matter what it was. I would ask for more hours at work. I would complain when they gave them to me. I was just the most negative of negative people. But ultimately, then I had that conversation with the boss, and she said, dude, your attitude is trash. And she really challenged me. It was like that chin check, that chin check moment, to where I had to make a decision. She was like, look, you're doing all this, you're negatively impacting everybody at this store. We know you're a great sales associate, or just like some of the people out there, some of the listeners out there, if we got student athletes listening, some people might say, we know you're the best player on the team, but if your attitude is terrible, nobody will care how great you are.
Right.
And then after we got to that point, we had that conversation. Then I did some self-reflection, and then that's when I birthed something called the No Complain campaign, which was a social media push just to help people become more optimistic and ultimately just focus on the problems that you don't have as well as the ones that you do, and be grateful for both of them, because the ones that you do have, they're a learning experience. The ones that you don't, hey, just be grateful that you're not in the situation that somebody else is, because I guarantee if you were at a point in a position where you laid your problems down like some cards and somebody else laid theirs down as well, you would be quick to pick your hand back up.
For sure. Attitude is something that I talk about a lot with, the athletes that I work with, or just anybody, some of our employees that we have and stuff like that. Like it's the most important thing in my mind about life, and is being grateful for the things that you do have, because the things that you don't have, you don't need. The things that you do have,
Mm.
no matter what it is, like you said, you put these cards down, I'm gonna take my hand regardless, and a lot of people are worse than you, not you, but you know what I mean.
That's true. That no, it's true both ways. I'm with you. I'm with you.
About to wrap up just a second, but tell me about the book that you authored, a couple of years in the making now.
Yes, sir. So process actually was birthed from the No Complain campaign. Initially, I was going to name process the No Complain campaign, but we figured it wouldn't be clear, and we figured that nobody would really want to pick it up, because nobody, if you're a complainer, you wouldn't want to pick up the book. So we decided to go with process: 14 surprising simple behaviors to skyrocket millennials to success. And the reason that I wrote the book was just to encourage and just to spur on the millennial generation. I talk about being positive. I talk about being grateful. I talk about just being determined. It's a mindset shifting book for sure. And that was really the goal, just to be a tool, to be a resource. And we have self-reflection and writing prompts at the back of each chapter, so we can always dissect it personally for our own personal life and for our own personal development. Just grateful from the support that we received, and even now, with people still supporting and taking the book and applying principles to the life. And I go back and read it. I've gone back and read it a few times actually, just to just to check in on myself, and as I continue to develop as well. So it's been a great journey, been a great journey thus far, and grateful that it's a resource that's helping students and adults alike.
For sure. I'd like you to now help all the adults, for all the coaches that are out there. You work with student athletes, so you know what
Hmm.
they say, and the things that they tell you, they not gonna tell the coach. Okay. So what would be your advice to coaches out there that coach players uh, in this new generation?
Hmm. I would say when when the players speak, listen, and don't listen to respond, but really listen to hear, what they're facing. If it's something off the floor, on the floor, etc. Because sometimes there's a point in time where a coach may have a great play drawn up, and this might be the way that we've always done things. But the athlete on the floor might see something different than what was seen before, right? So that'd be the first thing. Just listen, but also allow the student athletes to know that if they have any problem, mental health, family, that they can talk to you about it. Because there's a lot of these athletes out here that are struggling with some mental health concerns. And I've talked with some of them, and they've asked me, can I talk to my coach about this? So we need to begin to normalize that conversation just around mental health and mental wellness, just so student athletes can know that they can talk to you if they have a problem. And even in addition to that, that they don't just see you as somebody who's just there for sport, that this is going to be a lifelong relationship, and that ultimately you are pivotal in their lives. So I mean, I have much love and much respect for all the coaches out there who coach and sacrifice time with family, sacrifice time with friends, and even sacrifice birthday parties and stuff like that. So I have the utmost respect, for coaches and all that they do. And I just want them to know that mental health is something that we should take more serious. And when the player says that they're feeling one way or the other, then we need to listen to them, and see what we need to do to make sure that they get the resources that they need.
I think what you hit on is exactly what we need to start doing. And there's a lot of great coaches that do this, but it's called transformation. And transformational coaching is beyond the X's and O's. beyond the ball or beyond the buckets, because you're investing in those other, these individuals' lives. Like you said, it's a lifelong relationship. You want these kids to invite you to their special occasions or have good things to say about you. When maybe you or I were growing up, coaches were, just transactional, where it was like, you do this, we go and we keep it moving. Well, now you have to really invest in those relationships if you want to get that impact that really you should, because you're spending more time these players than a lot of their family members, like their grandparents with you, unless they live with them, and you're hours upon hours upon hours a season with these athletes. And I think being more transformational is and working on those interpersonal relationships go further than the court.
Without a doubt. I agree with you.
So Jonathan Jones Speaks, tell me where everybody can find you, follow you, and consume all of the content that you are pumping out.
Yes, sir. You can go to jonathanjonespeaks.com. And that's Jonathan with one H, because I know sometimes people try to give me two. But jonathanjonespeaks.com, that's where you can find me, or you can type in Jonathan J Speaks on any social platform, and I should come up. And I welcome all DMs. I welcome all conversations. And, I would love just to continue to be connected with more people just throughout the space, and be able to see how we can serve and support these student athletes best. But Chris, thank you for having me on the show and taking me beyond the buckets.
My pleasure. The pleasure is all mine, my friend.
Thank you for listening to the Beyond the Buckets podcast. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and share the show with your friends. And until next time, take care.